This was perhaps 1979. I think it's at Carlsbad Raceway, San Diego. That's me checking my spark plugs. If you can tell, the carb tray is already set up so I could put all the plugs in order so I could read them. Unfortunately, I wasn't into NGKs then. I thought I was reading it correct. Anyway, that's my brother looking at the ET slips, my brother Bo, and my good buddy Patrick. And hey, came a long ways. And this car eventually won the Muscle Car Nationals and set a bunch of victories at the Ford Drags, sponsored by Cougar Club of San Diego, out there by Carlsbad. And fairly good car. Won a lot of races with it. Please subscribe, like, and share. Hey, what happened to you? It's been a month. I tell you, it's just been so hot here in Las Vegas that I can't even do anything. It's like 118, 115, over 100 degrees, even at night. So right now I'm doing this from the shop with the sun going down, and it'll blur the screen, and I hope the quality or the picture quality is still good. But today we will talk about what goes on with your engine when you don't know anything about it. All right? When somebody built your engine, or you bought an engine from somebody else and they said it's got this and it's got that, how are you sure you have what they said you have? And at this point, I'll use an example of this particular engine here. And here's what's going on with this. Our subject matter today is trying to know what your engine is all about. If you've bought a used one or had it built, you have no idea what it is. Here's a perfect example. This is a 460 Ford Motorsport big block Ford. And I tell you what, it is very, very weak. And it's a perfect example for our discussion to see what in the world is going on and what we're going to find. And this is going to be towards the end of the video where I will show my finding and we'll go from there. Okay, guys, there are engines that sometimes got my head scratching. This is one of those Ford crate engines. It's a 460 30 over. So I don't know what happened here. I've driven the thing and it does not run. It is slow. There you go. Part numbers right there. And first thing I did was check, make sure the camshaft is right where it says it is. It's about a 580 lift camshaft, and I don't know. It just doesn't go. So I'm gonna take it all apart and I'll give you guys the detailed things and the advice that I want to put forward on this video. There's a Ford Motorsport 460 big block, and it's supposed to be powerful, or it's supposed to have lots of power. Well, you know, a lot of crate engines basically put it out there and advertise they have so much power. And from my experience with a crate motor with a big block Chevy, they do, you know, work. And I had one that we did a crate motor and it ran low 10, high 9s. That is very impressive considering that it's a crate engine. However, this Ford here, something happened. And I remember when we had a 429, similar layout, a lot less cubic inches, you know, about 30, 31 inches to be exact. This car ran on our Torino, my brother and I's 4,000 pound Torino. It ran 1380 on radial tires. That's pretty impressive. Through the mufflers, all that, street tires, 1380 is not bad. Now, this particular crate motor here, I drove it, and I was soundly disappointed. It didn't run worth the stuff. I tell you, I don't want to cuss, but I tell you, this thing was a pig. It didn't even move or anything like that. Anyway, the owner, Ed, he decided to pass it over to me to check it out. And when I drove it, boy was I disappointed. I can't even spin the tires. And I got to about 3,500 on the back road, and I mashed the pedal. I didn't even break the tires loose. Amazing. Therefore, what happened here? And when he got home, I started texting him some questions. All right, and he says it's a real thing. It's a real SVO or Ford Motorsport crank motor. So I said, could you do a compression check for me? And he did. And it came up to 120 pounds of cranking pressure. I go, whoa, that is low considering he's around Los Angeles sea level. 120 is basically dead, all right, as far as I'm concerned. But let me say something here. You can have an engine that pops after 4 or 5 kicks of 160 or 175 cranking pressure after 4 or 5 kicks on the compression gauge. If one of the cylinders still reads real low at 100 pounds, you won't tell the difference. It will not miss. You won't have a dead spot or a miss while you're accelerating. It won't exhibit none of that. It'll still feel normal, but your quarter-mile tires will be a little bit less. And the best thing to do there, besides you did all the compression check, is do a leak down check. See where it's kicking at. 3%, 5%, 12%, or 20%. Depends. You gotta look at uniformity. All right. So it's rare that they all wear out at the same time. There are certain cylinders that would wear out faster than the other cylinders. Okay, and from experience, they never really gradually wear down the same amount. You know, some cylinders will be pumping better than the other ones. What to look for if you do not know much about your engine, built for you, or you bought it used or otherwise. Here are some tips that you could go by and try to evaluate what you have. What's your next move? Best advice that I can tell for guys that bought engines they have no knowledge about is when the compression check turns out good, not like this engine at 120 pounds, this 460, there is an issue there that I will share with you guys later on. 160, leak down check, you know, let's just say 3, 5, 6%, still not too bad, okay? Especially an engine that's been running and you don't know where the clearance are at on the ring end gap. That could have something to do with it. Or if it's really close to 3 and 1%, then maybe you got a zero gap ring layout there. So now let's proceed. I told Ed he doesn't have a vacuum gauge, but what I recommend for other people is that put a vacuum gauge in it and see where it reads at idle. Small block, big block, if it's reading 6.5 or lower, 5.55 at idle, you got a camshaft in it. Okay, now if it reads 14, 16, you don't have a cam in it like the builder or the seller said to you. It's not gonna read that high. Okay, maybe if you have a VTEC, variable timing, or cam time, sure, maybe, but we're talking about V8 engines here with a set timing, where you set your timing chain or degree the camshaft. If it reads 14, 15, 16 or higher, you got a stock cam. Now if it's reading 10, 12 inches, or maybe, you know, 14, maybe that's an RV cam of some sort. But if it's reading below 14, you got a mild cam in it. So take note and make sure you get a good vacuum gauge that's readable and accurate. All right, so it's not reading 8, you know, instead of really it's 10, or 8 instead of really 6.5. Make sure you got something good that you can rely on. But again, let's continue on. There's just so many engines out there that are sold or bought that maybe we have no idea what it's all about. And sometimes we're quick to blame the seller or maybe the builder. But let's get the basics right in the first place. first or second thing you got to check out is, where's your initial timing set at? Is it timed at 6 or 8 degrees as per factory specification? No. Okay? Put it to 14, 16, above the factory one, as much as minimum 2 degrees. I think whatever from the get-go, if you got a mild camshaft in it, set it to 14, 4 degrees above stop. Now, what's going to happen here? Sorry guys, it's just 100 degrees here, super hot. 105, and the sun's setting down. Still 105, that's why I'm sweating. I'm doing this in segments. Therefore, if you set your initial timing at 14, remember, for most engines, when you increase the initial timing, you increase the response of the engine. So when you bought this used engine or had somebody build you an engine and you're unhappy, or if you finally fired it up, where's your initial timing at? Okay, and we're coming up next to the total timing. Your initial timing gives you that response. Okay, it's really, really bad when the timing at the lower RPM at idle is retarded big time. You won't have the response. It'll come in a little later, right, and go, oh, it's pulling hard after a while. Initial timing. Check the initial timing, make sure you got 14 or 16, whatever, or like here in Las Vegas, high altitude, or you live in Colorado Springs, you better bring it up to about 6 degrees from where the factory setting is at. Okay, or maybe more. Now, when you do that, the next move is, let's say, okay, now let's look at that total timing. Most cars, they would love to see that ignition timing full advance, especially with a camshaft, at about 3,000 RPM. Some guys with gears in their, on the rear axle or high stall converter like to see about 2,000, 2,500 RPM. Check. Where's your gear ratio at? When you got 456, 410s, okay, you might like to see, you know, something around 2,000 RPM with a stall speed converter. Now, when you have highway gears, 355, 373, you might like 2,500. But if you're above 3,000, excuse me, it is too slow. The top end potential, total timing, is not going to be there. Typical Ford, 34 degrees total lead in the crank. If it's in by 2,500 for your street car, why not? If it's like 4,500, you're losing power. That power that you lost, you blame the engine builder, or you blame the guy that sold you the engine. It is not right when the setup is all wrong from the get-go. Small block Chevy like somewhere around 36 degrees total timing. So the Ford at 34, the Chevy at 36. If you don't have these numbers, okay, if, let's say for example, you have an Edelbrock head, dial the tech line for Edelbrock. Have this Edelbrock Chevy heads or Ford head, where does it want this total timing to be at? They'll tell you, oh, that wants to see 36. Or AFR, hey, where's this timing want to be seen at for this small block Chevy or small block Ford I have? They'll tell you maybe 34 or whatever. Look at their recommendation, where they want their heads total timing or ignition requirements to be at. It's up to you how fast you want to ramp it up. But the total timing requirements is very important. If that cylinder small block Chevy AFR required 36, put it at 36 at 2,500 RPM. Put as much ignition lead time in it at idle. Let's say you're at 16 and have it cut off at 2,500 and stop at 36 degrees, you're perfect. If the engine still doesn't run, you want to kill the guy that sold you the thing, right? Or no. Keep checking. Look at what the problem is. Do you have the correct CC on the intake runner? Again, look at the catalog. They'll tell you 170 cc, 190 cc wants this kind of cubic inches or this kind of compression. That is very important. Oh, before I miss it altogether, that camshaft, all right, the If you have a camshaft there, it'll read low on the vacuum. Also remember that refer to the catalog as well. It'll tell you right there what the camshaft's RPM limits are, or the RPM range. It'll tell you how much compression it wants or requires, or of course the RPM range, what kind of carburation it requires. If that particular camshaft, let's say it's at 6,500 or 7,000 RPM, and then I'll say it wants a 750, all right, or an 800 or 850, and you already referred to your catalog for the AFR head or the Edelbrock head or Brodix head, it tells you got the right intake runner volume. So now you have the right camshaft. Okay? Everything has to gel and work together. Then you found out you have a 600 vacuum secondary on your 408 or a 383. There it is. Okay? Guys, always you got to remember, there are these things that come into play. It's easy to point a finger. Somebody would say, oh, this guy messed up my engine. Well, let's have an open mind. Sometimes that's not the case. It is on our end. Okay? And let me tell you a story. Years ago, I did a small block Chevy for an off-road guy up Northern California. And I did the engine, fired it up, happy with it, responsive, sent it to him. Him and his buddies installed it and did some minor modification, I guess. They took the carb that I had fired up in it and they so-called modified it, rebuilt it. Anyway, called up him and his buddy. They go, Ben, we're kind of disappointed, man. You have such a good reputation, but we're really, really disappointed in this engine. It don't go, man. It's got a lot of response and then it peters out on the end. Just a dog. I'm going, oh my God, what the hell did these guys do? Man, we did everything correct, man. And this engine just don't run. Okay, called up my mentor, Charles Stevens, and he said, Ben, go there. Fix it, or look at what happened. Might not be your fault. I know you for so long. You're very meticulous. Check it. So at that time, my son is 3 years old. I put it on the baby seat on my Mustang. Boom, I went 6.5 hours up north to look at this engine that I supposedly built, or that I did build, not supposedly. Anyway, 6.5 hours later, I'm there. And I looked at it, fired it up. Okay, sounds like idles, no vacuum leak or nothing. Then I drove it. Oh yeah, it didn't want to run at high RPM. It kind of like really petered out. So I said, what is going on here? I put it back in the garage, lifted up the hood again, looked closely, and I said, did you say that this guy's modified the carburetor? Yeah, they changed the jets. Power valve, I go, it was already set. I don't know what these magicians did. Anyway, I did a quick look around, and the vacuum secondary. You can check the Ford Holly, or you know what they had was a Ford Holly with the dual feed layout. When the inlet is on the driver's side, so they were running a 735 actually, Holly. Is you cover the choke housing and you floor it, whoa, and you see the secondary open up. All right, that means the vacuum canister, the vacuum secondary is working. So I covered the choke housing and I revved it up. And I looked at the secondary, it didn't even open up. It just stayed there. Ha! I look around, it's hooked up. I took off the vacuum secondary, which I'll do a video here about the Holly. There's so many mistakes about the vacuum secondary. And I'll go through the modification I did to make my car win the Muscle Car Nationals back in the 80s. Anyway, they did not seal the secondary correctly. How you assemble it, there's a technique. And I think they just put it in there and turned the screw and off it went. But they didn't choke the housing, the primary, cover it up and see if the secondary kick open. They didn't do that. But they modify carburetors, I guess. Alright. So I fixed that,
hooked up the linkage, and I didn't even drive it. I said to the owner, drive it. So boom, off he went. As soon as he cast it on his driveway, burning rubber. Continue on to the dirt. Off he's got. He's got a big, I think a 10-acre property. So he's out there hauling ass in the wide open. Comes back with a big grin and said, man, now this thing hauls ass. I said, good, I'm happy. I'm out of here, man. He kind of noticed I'm upset. Because when I gave him the carburetor, unmodified, but I did my thing in it, somebody else in there jumped in and screwed it all up. So I stuck my son in there. Hey, you want some lunch or what? Yeah, it's okay, man. I'm tired. 6.5 hours coming here. I got another 6.5 hours to drive. And with a kid, it's not a fun thing to do. So I left. And I called up my mentor. I said, Chuck, it was a second there. It wasn't working. He said, told you. Not your fault. Somebody down the line would always try to be smart, a rocket scientist or something. Go in there and start modifying your stuff. Screws it up. That's a perfect example. So we go through all those details, and you can probably notice, but I keep take extra break and turn on the AC here, and it cooled me down. That's 104. Anyway, so here we go. Another one to look at is the headers. Now, this 460, you know, it's pretty big engine. The header size is 1 3/4 inches. So that's another indication why it's not making any power. But it should still give me a lot of this response with a small header. It should blow the tires, just like you had a stock exhaust manifold. It would still allow it to burn rubber, especially with a big block. It did not. So there was something there. But the 1 3/4, that's not enough for a 460. It's good for a mild, you know, or a healthy 302, even a 347 or a 351, 1 3/4, good. Okay, 30, 40, 60 over 351 Windsor with a stock crank, sure, 1 3/4. When you get to the 408 Chevy, Ford, or Mopar, at least have an inch and 7/8, or something that makes 550, okay, 600 horsepower. Make sure you have that 1 and 7/8 minimum. Okay, but if the guy tells you I'm making 800 horsepower, then you look, he's got an 1 3/4 header. Yeah, right. You wish. It's not gonna make no 800 horsepower with that smaller header. But let me go back again. I always have stories to tell about my experiences. Years ago, there's one famous. No, you guys know his name, but I'm not at liberty to give his name just like that. We were on the dyno, and a small block Ford supercharged Paxton race blower on our 347 made 955 horsepower, something like that. Okay, that's healthy. Back in the mid 90s, 94, 93, 950 horse. Flywheel. It's got, what header size was that? I think it's an 1 and 7/8. Yeah, 1 and 7/8 to a merge collector. Or was it? Oh no, I think it's not even a merge collector, but a pretty healthy collector. And like I said, 955 horsepower. And we had a set of shorty header or a mid-length header. Not really the shorty that you get for the 5.0, but more like a mid-length, like a roadster header, or what they call the shorty header for roadsters or something like that. Out of curiosity, we put it on. Okay, remember this is a supercharged 347 with a Paxton blower. So we did the first dyno pull, and then we look at each other like, what the hell was that? Made 980. Okay, 25 more horsepower than the full-length header. That was an eye-opener. And we'll all look at each other. By the time we set our heads together, supercharged engines don't like long primary pipes. That's why eventually almost all my 9-second street cars here in California running supercharged small block, they have a not a long header, but basically I cut from the collector, you put the muffler, turn down. There are no X pipe going to the back, or that Mac header, that whatever they call that thing, that box that acts like an X pipe or an H pipe. Then go to the axle and then to the bumper. None. I cut it right underneath the driver's side, and they all run much faster. An indication of what we found out on the dyno. Supercharged cars don't like long headers. Keep the exhaust system short. Now, if it's not believable, well, think about this. Funny cars, top fuel, they'll do anything to get the extra mile an hour. If they made power with a merge collector with a 4-into-1 or 2-into-1, they'd do it. But the fact that they have a Zoomy tells you each individual cylinder wants a short primary pipe, and that's why they make the power with that. If you put a collector on all these guys, more likely they will not run. Okay? Supercharged alcohol or nitromethane, BB funny car, AA funny car, or top fuel, shorties. Okay, short. Basically, zoomies. Now, the reason for that is you don't have no use for a long primary pipe to help you pull the next column of air and fuel during overlap. You have no use for that. There's boost coming in upstream, okay, from the manifold under boost. It'll push into the cylinder. Okay, it doesn't need any help from overlap. That's why your overlap on a blower camshaft gets significantly less. There's still a little bit, but not as much as an NA. All right, you try to limit that, a wide separation between the intake and exhaust flow. It doesn't need the overlap pull on the intake column. Boost does that for you. So you negate that, you cut that short, and just dump it to atmosphere as quick as possible. Therefore, it likes short header. Now, whew, man, it's getting hot. What else do we have to think about? Oh, okay. So we continue on. Damn, it's hot. Did the guy degree the camshaft correctly? Or, and I've seen it happen, not only did they put the timing chain wrong, but they got the wrong timing chain for that particular year. For example, the 460 Fords, I don't know what year that was, 73 or 74, where they changed the timing set. They still use the same camshaft for the factory 460s, but they put a 6-degree retard on the timing chain and installed that there. Amazing, isn't it? So, if somebody rebuilt this engine, if it was originally a motorsport block somebody went through, or probably changed the timing chain for whatever reason and put the wrong timing chain, you're going to lose power. Having a 6-degree retarded camshaft is like having a 30-degree retarded timing. Okay, for example, I had a coworker at LAPD. He had a 460 fuel injection, all that. He goes, "Hey Benny, this weekend I'm going to change the timing chain. You know, I see my thing bouncing back and forth." I said, "Well, did you check the play on the distributor?" So, "Yeah, I check all that. Let me give you an advice. Change the timing chain to a 1970. "Oh, what for?" "That's an older timing chain." No. Put that on. It's a pre-smog. You have a 6-degree retard on your 460. I think it's a 76 or 77 460 F250. So he put the timing chain straight up, 70s style. As soon as it fired up, he called me up and says, "Ben, you won't believe this. This thing now is a real big block. I'm burning rubber all over the place," which I never used to do. It just used to go, oh, and then start to accelerate. Now it says it's just burning rubber. Yep. That's a degree camshaft to 0 now, not 6 degrees. So that was, then he started telling all his buddy with the same big block F250, F350 changed their timing chain, and like a bunch of monkey see, monkey do, they all did it. They're all happy though. Anyway, so that's one thing you got to really look at. I want to see this block if it's got a retarded timing chain. You never know. So anyway, let's repeat this. Make sure the gear ratio, axle gear ratio matches up with your camshaft. All right. Converter matches up with your camshaft as well, or vice versa. Intake, carburation, what CFM is it, or what throttle body size is it. Make sure it's also, oh, nice brace. You also get the ideal recommended throttle body opening or carb size. All right, so same thing with fuel injection. If you're running 160, I see a lot of people out there change to a 160 thermostat, and the doggone engine, the computer, never gets up. Instead of having open loop to closed loop, right? It doesn't change, so it's basically in a choke condition. All right. So when it comes up to 185, 1 up, or 180, it starts looking at all the other sensors within the engine. Okay. Then it's able to adjust correctly and fine tune. Otherwise, you'll be on choke mode, which you don't want it to be. So make sure the temperature is correct via the thermostat that you have on that particular, if it's fuel injection. Also, I would like to see even carburetions to be above 180, 185. I've seen a lot of bore wear when the engine's at 180 or below. You see the ridge on the cylinder when you take off the head gasket, because it's not at optimum operating temperature. The oil is also not at operating temperature to function correctly. So you get a lot of wear and tear. Okay, now this 460's got a flat tappet. Again, I don't want to build or see an engine built today with a flat tappet camshaft. It's a must that you have what we call a hydraulic roller build. Remember that camshaft on a flat tappet, it's not really riding dead center. The lifter is riding off to the one side. That is, while it's turning, it permits the lifters to rotate, keeps it lubricated, and the flat tappets will not eat itself alive. Now, I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's not the oil, you know, it's the lifters or the manufacturer." Yes and no. Even good American company, cam manufacturers with their lifters made in US, they fail because they were never meant to run on 10 weight, 5 weight, 15 weight oil. Back in the day, I'm not really a spring chicken anymore. We run 30 weight, 40, 50, 60. We don't have that anymore. Okay, we have 10 weight 30, 10 weight 40, or 5 weight, whatever, 50, very light oil. And the synthetic is very slippery. It doesn't want to rotate as much or as fast. So you got flat spots there. And that's when they start to grind themselves alive. Slippery, just like putting synthetic oil in your in your plus traction on the rear. They wonder why you're still peg leg, one leg digging in instead of two. Too slippery. Okay? So take note of that. Let me tell a story about, again, going back to fuel injection. This customer of mine said to me, "We've been trying to horse around with this doggone electrical issue we have with our fuel injected Mustang. What is it doing? Every time the fan kicks in, it starts to idle rough. We check the air-fuel ratio, everything's consistent, so it just starts to shake." Anyway, I've seen it happen many times. They brought the car to me, and it's a Pro-Am mass air sensor, 77 millimeter, I think, sitting right there on the front. It's not a cold air anymore. All right, it doesn't have the box, the intake. It's just sitting there, oval filter. As soon as the fan kicks in, it starts idling rough. So you know what I did? I got a piece of cardboard nearby, and here's the airflow filter. I stuck a cardboard there. Then it started idling real good. They all looked at each other and said, "What the hell was that?" I said, "You're getting a little bit of flow from the fan. You got one of them high volume fan, and it's hitting the mass airflow meter, and upsetting. Okay, it's making some surges in there on the airflow and confusing the computer calibration on the mass air sensor. Anyway, so we shut the fan off, fired it up again when it wasn't hot. I took off the air filter and I did this to the front of the mass air meter. I went like this. Start shaking. And then I went like this again, start shaking. I said, there you go. Now you see it, right? Put a little shield on the side of that open round K&N filter. Put a block in it. So they did put a block, and when the fan kicked in, it idled nice. They were ready to blame the air filter, or the mass air sensor or whatever, or the electronic, whatever. They started a lot of fingers pointing, but it was just simple as that. Okay, so we went through our checklist. Engine vacuum, compression check, how much did it put out compression wise on the needle. Leak down, everything still checks off okay. Why is this still a pile of crap? That's basic. Now, let me tell you something. Now let's look at some of the faults of the engine builder. I came across, somebody called me up, this is 25, 30 years ago. Ben, I have a supercharged convertible, 408 with a big 4-tank blower. I don't even know what it was, but he said it only made this much power. I said, okay, what is it doing? Is it detonating or whatever? It's just got lots of bottom end torque and then it peters out on the end. Anyway, so he brings me the car and he pulled up on my shop. Boy, he's making a racket. It's got a big camshaft, obviously, and you can hear the blower whining. I go, oh my God, all right. Sounds like the broken water pumps scenario here. Well, it's actually the blower. Anyway, when I popped the hood, first thing I looked at, that's a massive blower. I looked to my right towards the passenger side, the driver's side. It's got, of all things, a cast iron dart head. I go, how much did you pay for this engine? Mind you, this is 25, 30 years ago. He goes, I paid 18 grand for it. 18 grand for that engine, without the blower, right here, just the engine. Oh my God. Not only had a cast iron, but eventually when we pulled it out, the piston's sitting about 30 thousandths down the hole. And to top it off, the head gasket was thick. It was a copper head gasket with a wire. It was like 65 thousandths. Let's round up to 60 thousandths. Plus 30 down the hole. That's a 90 thousandths quench. Almost 100 thousand. Of course it'll detonate. Of course it'll detonate with the cast iron head. He has no quench. The very decent dark combustion chamber, which works very well in the right circumstance, was now basically ineffective. It acted like an open chamber in Cleveland. All right? So, I talked to the engine builder. He goes, well, I didn't know it would have made a difference. Of course it would make a difference. And then to top it off, when we took that off, it had a flat tappet camshaft on it as well. So anyway, for the amount of money back then, a little under $20,000, I would have expected a hydraulic roller, at least, or a mild solid roller camshaft. Didn't have none of that. All right. So that's one. Another one is keep repeating the story. A friend of mine's got a small block Chevy, and his head was, the piston was like 30 thousandths down the hole, and same thing with a thick head gasket. And we changed it over, decked the block to 0. He went out there and ran 4/10ths quicker, almost half a second quicker, with just setting the correct depth. And then the one big winner of them all was I had this supercharged Mustang from a street racer from Los Angeles. He goes, I'm not happy with my engine, I want you to look it over. So when I took it apart, Right off the bat, I noticed the very thick head gasket again. Seemed like 60,000 is what the favorite number is for just about everybody. And I see some at 70,000, 75, copper. The piston sitting 50,000 down the hole. 50 plus 60, that's 110,000 down. So I went ahead and changed the 6200 rod to 6250. Now it's sitting pretty much flush. Okay, plus and minus 2-3 thousandths. That's okay. And put a 40 thousandths Velcro gasket. That's all I did. And degreed the camshaft. He had it significantly retarded. And when I told him to pick it up, he asked me how much do I owe you. It wasn't very much. And then he left, came right back with his buddy. He said, man, this thing runs faster than with the blower. And the boost isn't kicking in yet. My tipping power is so much quicker, so far sounds stronger. I go, of course. Now your combustion chamber is working for you. Now you get some kind of mixture motion from the mixture being slapped by the deck or by the quench, creating a lot of air fuel mixing going on before the boost comes in from the blower. Now you really feel you got a lot of power. Yeah, I think I'll beat my old blower setup without the blower. All right, so some of those stories, there are more, but I'll run out of time here. Okay, I know you guys love the stories, and boy, I have a bunch of stories to tell the truth. Oh, one last thing. Years ago, I had one guy who came up to me with his project. He wanted a very strong running big block Ford. So we ordered some Yates big block Ford head. I configured the piston, the camshaft to complement the kind of high port intake and exhaust. Lump center is different. All that, bought all the parts, and then I called him up and I said, okay, look, now we're ready to go. Now we're going to start doing the machine work, assembly, and that's when you start basically paying me after we got all the parts. And he said, well, I'm going to stop the project. I said, oh, okay. Why? He says, I decided I'll do something else. Boy, I was going to hell. I wonder what's going to go on here. It's got my head configuration, the piston configuration, the camshaft, all that. And then I called my mentor again. I said, what am I going to do? He said, Ben, you don't have the money to replace all that engine, because he went at you gung-ho with the parts, no holds barred, and you can't buy those back. I know you don't have the money, which I don't. All right, I was still working then, PD. So he picked up the stuff, and I just said, oh my God, what's wrong with this guy? What it turned out was, I heard through the grapevine, he is dealing with another shop, somewhere around Pomona area or whatever, that they just wanted the core parts that I use, and they were not going to charge him to build this engine as long as they have all the parts that I use. Anyway, make a long story short, almost 2 years later, the car shows up at the racetrack. And I looked at it and I told him, I go, hey, I thought you quit. You're going to do something else, like off-road racing. Oh no, I decided that, I was going to finish the project. I said, well, why don't you take it back to me? And well, I had somebody else do it. I go, I already knew the story. Okay, so he basically ripped me off, in a sense. Anyway, the engine builder comes up to me and says, Ben, how do you like my engine? I said, it looks good. The same carburetor, same intake, same heads. And he goes, well, it's a strong one. Maybe stronger than if you would have built it. I said, oh, okay. And you know what? Let me give you some advice. I go, sure. What's going on? I said, when you go to competition, really hard competition, if you want, I'll lend you one of my engines so you start winning races. At that point, I won a bunch of races already. He has not. All right? He's got a shop building engine, but nothing. I remember when we met each other at the Ford Drags, his car couldn't even qualify. Way behind me. And this guy's building this guy's engine right now. Unbelievable. But anyway, the guy eventually gave up because the car didn't run according to his expectations. So I called man, hey Ben, can we start over, man? I bring in the engine, take it apart, see what happened here. I said, you know what, man, I think you're doing pretty good for what you have. All right, good luck. I didn't want to deal with him anymore because I already knew he wasn't up front with me, it's just a rip-off. Anyway, but just because they had all the parts doesn't mean they got it all. Where he set the deck, where he set the camshaft, where he set all these little itty-bitty things. All right? The heads wasn't even ported in. Where he set the valve angles at. Okay? So there are other things that I would have done that have really made a difference. Not one big thing, but several little things that, taken as a whole, is an advantage. But that is really truly amazing for somebody who never won a race to offer me his engine so that I could win races, as I said. It's amazing, and that guy still around, as far as I know, still hasn't won a race. He hasn't joined PSCA or, you know, West Coast Hot Rod, any of the heads-up races. He hasn't showed up. And when he shows up to the regular Ford races at Carlsbad back then, okay, or even at, you know, Verona Speedway, even at Palmdale, or last time I seen him was at Bakersfield at the Ford Rags. His numbers don't even get close to anywhere where mine was at. But I was going to tell him then when he was qualified, bought him up. Hey, maybe I can borrow your engine so I can go quicker, huh? Anyway, at that time I was qualified number 1. Second behind me was Jameson Suarez, which is also coming back. And he was right behind me, and he said to me, hey Ben, what happens if I beat you at the finish? I said, it's okay. I still win because I built your engine. My name is on your car. Okay, I'm not stingy. If you beat me, I'm happy. But I proved to you that your engine is as strong as mine. Okay, I'm not hiding nothing from you. But Jameson will be back soon. Anyway, now let's look at this 460. And I've seen some stuff here that is obviously wrong. All right, so let's take a look at it. I remember I had a 7429, my brother and I, and that doggone thing went, as I posted in other videos, it ran 1380 with radial tires. That is fast for a 4,200 pound car. And I expected this should be even more. It's got aluminum heads, Cobra Jet ones, but something just flat out didn't work out. Something is going on here. All right, so we will touch bases when I take this apart, and we'll see what happens. It looks pretty good. Or what happened? And I checked the lift on it, it's about 580. So it's got good quality push rods, rocker arms, which is possibly made by, look like a Crower. Yeah, it is a Crower. It's just good quality pieces, but it just don't run.
One thing I found out here was that it was using a good head gasket. Looked like a Felpro. But the crazy part is the doggone piston sitting about 28 down the hole. Roughly 26, 28 down the hole. Bad enough.
You know, upon close analysis, it looked like the head gasket on this thing loosened up. You can see blow-by gases there, right there, and more so right there. So, right there as well. This was reading 120 cranking pressure, 120 pounds. So, when you look at here, look like it did. All right, here's clear. It's sealing real well right around there. But this is not too bad. And here's not too bad. But here it is. All right, so I think what we're looking at is the head gasket is slowly leaking out. Let me look at here. Right there. Okay? Right here. Right there. So,
and right here. And you know, when I untorqued it, that is sealed real good. So, and here, a lot of, you know, blow-by gases there. That is good. This is no good. Good, good, good. Fair, fair. But that is a problem right there. Okay, so this is why, that's why maybe this is reading so low. Okay, the head gasket, when I untorqued it was somewhat loose. So that's probably the reason for the loss of power, and at the same time, it wasn't overheating though, because it wasn't going to the water ports. That was sealed. So maybe the heads are warm, something's going on. I'm gonna check all that. Well, there it is. If your head gaskets are leaking, you have no chance for power. So definitely, this is what ails this engine. That's all for tonight. And anyway, I'll continue on with another video here soon enough. Thank you very much, guys. It's hot.